The gentleman from Alabama.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say for the record that my wife is wonderful. So that's how I'd answer the question as a married man. But I've
Well, I'll listen carefully. You never know someday for me, so I'll store that up in case
yeah, I
of a
could never
future
get away with that
contingency.
answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spoke to the Women in Housing and Finance group here in Washington about 6 weeks ago, and this is something I said, and I may want your comment on this. I said the critical failure in the government's response to the financial crisis is that we are waiting for events to overtake us and then reacting in an environment of crisis. The essence of the problem, the core breakdown in decision making, is that we postpone decisions until we're overwhelmed by the problems of the day. And I describe this as kind of a reactionary fire brigade mentality. And Dr. Blander, you I think called it an ad hoc piecemeal approach. You know, and some of the problems I see with that is sometimes we cross like the proverbial Rubicon. I mean, we're rushing to fix a problem, and we go beyond points where normally we'd sit back and say, you know, what are the long-term consequences of this? And just like your comments.
I think there's some truth to that, both to the worry and to the criticism. That said, as these really stunning, and I would say it's not too strong a word to say unbelievable events have unfolded since the pot blew in August 2007, it would have required superhuman foresight to see what was coming. I mean, even if it's just to take something concrete, I think even in early September, to foresee what was going to happen with AIG on around September 16th or 17th or whenever it happened.
And that's 2008.
2008, yes, would have been next to impossible. It took my breath away what happened on those days. Now, if you raise the point, well, was that very ad hoc? Yes, it was. Mightn't it have been done better? Probably.
No, and let me say this. I agree with you. In August, September, no one, I don't think anyone had any idea the magnitude of this. I think by October, November, we did, but you know, there's still not a comprehensive.
Right.
Although the term auction facility of $1 trillion may actually be, you know, an example of something that is. Now, let me say this. You ask about it. They're still going through the regs and rules, and it's not out there yet. So,
right.
But I'm sorry.
So yeah, I know. I agree with what I think you just implicitly said. I think the TALF is a rules-based, transparent, systemic, and systematic approach to restoring the viability of some of these credit markets, and that's what's wanted. I mean, I think that if I look at the pantheon of things that have been done, my favorite things are starting with the commercial paper facility and then leading into the TALF. I think those are real steps towards a cure. I think I said in the testimony that, yeah, I did, that I was praising the Fed since October. You could look back to that September, October, and even before period, and I think find things to criticize. I see a turning point, although Chairman Bernanke didn't make a big deal of it at the time, as coming when they did the commercial paper facility. That was sort of the first step, and now it continues, and there's no guarantee that it's going to work, but the early returns, I'd say, were good. The commercial paper market now is very much back on its feet. When they started, there was one buyer, the Federal Reserve. That's not true anymore. The high-quality MBS, the Fannie and Freddie MBS market, because of the Fed's purchases, are looking much, much better than it did before, and that's had spillover to mortgage rates and so on.
And let me ask Dr. Taylor and Dr. Galbraith, too.
Yeah, let me comment on this, because I think what you say has a great deal of truth, Mr. Bachus. In fact, I've been studying this crisis for a while and decided just about the time that Alan Blinder said things turned to just write up, if you like, my assessment of first what caused it, Second, what caused it to last so long, because it did flare up in August of '07. And third, why did it worsen so much last fall, in the panic of last fall? And in each case, I look at the kind of things you're saying, that government basically didn't get it right. They got off track from some policies that were working really well in much of the 80s and 90s. First, some monetary excesses, which led to this boom and bust in housing. In terms of lengthening or prolonging it, if you like, misdiagnosing and then reacting in ways which didn't do any good. And by the way, I would include the stimulus package of last year, the stimulus of 2008, which sent checks to people and didn't do much good, or I'd include the term auction facility in that. And then finally, last fall, the very ad hoc reaction, which confused people, and the testimonies were taken very negatively and caused a lot of fear. And so in all those cases, it seems to me you're right, that sort of the government actions and interventions led to where we are, and I hope things are getting better. I don't think I think there could be more rules, if you like, with respect to how the Fed's operating. I don't like very vague statements about the total amount of reserves they're creating. I think that is going to lead to even more concerns, and it's good if they're being more specific about their initiatives. I worry about the Treasury's request for a whole new initiative for consumer and business lending. I don't know where that came from. I know the board has agreed to it, but still, that raises questions about the nature of responses and same kind of things you raise in your point.
Ms. Galbraith,
A modest difference with my colleagues. I think it was possible, and that there were people who had a reasonable understanding of how dangerous the situation was becoming as the subprime lending expanded, as the housing bubble expanded. And there were people in the spring of 2008 who had a pretty good sense, who were close enough to the markets and had the right sort of models, who had a pretty good sense of how bad the crisis could get. And I could submit for the record a memorandum that was based upon a seminar in June, which I think got the scale and character of the subsequent events approximately right. The problem here is that when you have a small group of people who do appreciate it, they are generally unable to project that to the larger policymaking community. And that's not by accident. It's simply that people who are very specialized and who see these things generally don't have the same reach and influence that people who are less close to the events may have. And Cassandra was always right, but no one believed her. There were reasons for that. And so in this situation, we are still, I think, underestimating the gravity of the crisis, and still in a situation where time will have to pass before the policymaking community is willing to move at the scale that's going to be required actually to deal with events.
I fear that the number of people will